That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Control Plus Create, AI for Creatives, a special 5-part pulse check mini-series from Enrollify and Element 451. I'm Dave Hunt, Executive Creative Director and longtime higher ed marketer. In this series, I'm sitting down with leaders and creative leads who are partnering with AI to scale ideas, streamline workflows, and push their work further without losing their voice. You'll get behind-the-scenes stories and practical playbooks to help you turn AI into your newest collaborator, not your competition. Whether you're leading strategy or hands-on in the work, our goal is to give you the tools and inspiration to unlock new possibilities with AI. Let's dive in. My guest today is Nick Gyani, head of higher ed sales at Canva and a founding member of Canva's Enterprise team back in 2020. Nick is passionate about empowering educators and students through visual communication, and he's helping universities unlock AI-driven design workflows that save time and elevate campus creativity. Nick, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's awesome. So, Nick, this isn't how I normally start a show, but there's another podcast on this network called Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, where the host begins her show by offering a marketing confession related to each episode's theme. And I don't want to steal from her, but I have a confession about Canva. Back when it launched, I was kind of skeptic and a little bit of a design snob about it. I'm a little embarrassed to say in 2025, but Canva really changed my mind. For many years, it's felt like Canva's been on a hot streak with releasing features, both big and small, that remove friction from things that I just kind of had taken for granted as being part of my work, both when I was doing day-to-day design and now when I'm in more of a leadership role. So I'm curious what Canva has learned about winning over creative pros who may have been skeptical at one point, and wondering, are there any key features in Canva that really flip the switch for people today?
Yeah, great place to start. I think the persona or the people that we talk to the most frequently are usually in the creative space. And I think skepticism is like normal, right? Like, especially I think in a field or in an area where people are so accustomed to doing things in a very specific way through a very specific set of steps. Skepticism is very normal and common. So don't feel embarrassed about that at all. We hear it all.
Thank you.
And, while I'm tempted to really give credit to like very specific features within Canva, because there's so many great things that get launched on a daily basis, I think the biggest area where we see sort of a flip the switch or an aha moment for creative professionals is not really within the features or the use of Canva itself. It's more about what Canva does to empower people around creative professionals, right? So that's where, like, I think the true value lies within the platform. Is like, in the past, it felt as if any and all design needs at any organization needed to go to a professional designer. And I think what Canva's really done a good job solving for is empowering people to be able to do a lot of that on their own. So I think that's when the switch really gets flipped for creative professionals, is when they realize, like, not only can I use this tool maybe in a daily basis, but more importantly, the hundreds or thousands or dozens of people around me are empowered to do things on their own, giving me kind of time back in my day to focus on more strategic things, or more focus on more things that I'm passionate about. So I think it really boils down to this, like, empowerment of Canva as a tool for anybody, whether you have professional design background or not. I think that's what really kind of flips the switch for creative pros.
That makes a lot of sense. And I feel like I've seen that be true at several universities now. And empowerment kind of leads into my next question a little bit. A few weeks ago, Fortune posted on LinkedIn about how Canva founder Melanie Perkins didn't have a technical background, but she had a vision for graphic design to be more accessible, and an understanding that the rise of social media was causing communications to become much more visual. And now Canva is this huge success story, the highest valued female-founded, female-led startup in the world, $3 billion in annual revenue last year. And when you shared that post, you also mentioned that something I love, she genuinely cares about everyone at Canva doing the most good to make the world a better place. So how do you see the rise of generative AI in particular impacting Canva's mission to empower people?
You mentioned this a couple of times, and I mentioned it a couple of times. Canva, the focus has always been democratizing design, right? Empowering anyone and anywhere on any device to be able to create visual communication or visual content, right? So I don't think Gen AI really changes that. If anything, I think it actually maybe helps accelerate it a little bit, right? I think it helps remove barriers that certain people have to the ability to create content, and not only that, it saves people time. So when you have this like unique sort of effect of saving people time and reducing barriers for them to be able to do what they want to do, I think that actually accelerates the ability to impact our mission to empower people. And then, alongside that, like Canva's two-step plan has always been to be one of the most valuable companies in the world and also do the most good we can. And Gen AI really helps us fuel step one, which in turn helps us provide fuel for step two. So while, yes, we can get into this whole like doom and gloom AI scenario, but I think we see the approach of, Gen AI actually is going to help extend our mission even further, and help democratize design even more. And we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've already talked a little bit about features launching on a really regular basis, and I wanted to mention, this spring my team did a big marketing maturity model exercise inside Canva, and we used whiteboards, and then had lots of notes and great meetings, kind of centered around using those things. And then we got to the end of that, multiple whiteboards, multiple post-it notes all over the place. And this very same week, Canva read my mind and launched this AI auto sort feature that I clicked a button, and in seconds, all my post-its were organized by topics that Canva created, and just these little micro things. So there's obviously big things that are launching all the time in Canva, but I feel like some of these small AI tools like that can also lead to big workflow improvements. And I'm curious how Canva is thinking about building in both the big things as well as those small moments that can have a big impact.
I'm glad you brought that specific moment in, because that actually blew me away too. When I first saw the beta version of that within whiteboards, I also was blown away, and I see things every day at Canva that are coming out. So glad you brought that one up. But yeah, as far as like the micro moments go, I mean, working pretty closely with our product team, we really do keep those things top of mind, right? Like the big picture things are great, and obviously we want to launch them, but we realize that these like micro moments that you described actually often have the biggest impact, right? Because it's just like a little thing that one person or one team needs. And especially in, fast-paced worlds of higher education, for example, where things can change rapidly or things need to happen very quickly, the micro moments are actually the things that have sometimes the biggest impact. Now, when we're building out our product roadmap and we're building out features that are going to be rolled out, we do actively think about making these moments real for individual groups and individual departments across K through 12 institutions, higher ed institutions, Fortune 500 companies. And we like to think of it as like AI is sort of sprinkled throughout all of these sort of micro moments. And now when you combine all of them together across an entire suite, you mentioned auto sort or magic write or AI suggestions, any of these like sort of sprinkled AI tools have such a massive impact across the entire team once you like compile all of them together. While we love the big picture and the huge splashy moments, these micro moments that you described actually are what's super top of mind for our product team, because we realize how big of an impact they can have, and how when combined, that's actually what makes the biggest impact rather than like one big product splash. So I'm glad you had that happen to you.
Yeah, it was a very surprised, like, oh, I just got a bunch of time back in my day because I'm not going to have to manually, think about how to organize. I mean, it came up with topics for me, all these little things. So it was a delightful, unexpected little like, oh, this is just done now. So thank the product team for me.
I love it. I will make sure I send them a note.
Thank you. Well, I do want to dial back up for a second to talk about the big picture things too. So Canva, had a big event this spring as they, I think, kind of frequently do on an annual basis, and launched the big spring update with Visual Studio 2.0, which brings in design and docs and sheets and coding and an AI chatbot and all these big things together. From your seat in higher ed sales, What kind of problems does that consolidation solve for campus creative teams?
I think, look, you're probably very familiar with this being in the space. And I think anybody that's in the higher ed space knows the most common thing you'll always hear is like, how can we do more with less? Especially right now. Resources, budget, people, funding, timing, like there's just like less to work with and more that needs to get done on a consistent basis. And I think especially right now, that's like we're seeing it more than ever. So with this consolidation, as you call it, sort of the ability to use Canva as much as possible as this one-stop shop for all your visual communication needs, like we do see that as like a huge opportunity for Canva to be able to provide people at universities with tools that they can basically consolidate all of it rather than having, you know, a whiteboard in one place, a presentation in one place, a social graphic in one place, stock images in one place. This consolidation effort really helps solve this problem that we see across universities about doing more with less. Not only does it provide like less of a reliance on all these other tools and making it a one-stop shop, but we also want it to be helpful for universities to be able to create content at scale and on brand. So when you have a fragmented sort of ecosystem of design tools, it's harder to stay on brand. It's harder to abide by brand guidelines, right? So the more we can put everything in one place, not only does that make it more efficient from a tool and a tech stack and spend standpoint, but now you're also empowering people to be able to create content at scale and on brand, which is what the true like goal of our campus solution is.
That's really cool. And I feel like there's huge benefit there. And some of it is, in my own, sort of personal experience and seeing things in higher ed, I feel like there's the advantage of having all this stuff together in one platform that, uses the same sort of language and it's easy to hop between the tools. There's also, zooming way out in a different direction. There's the procurement side of things where like we can solve this all with one tool, one contract, one, sort of solution there. So I love that. You mentioned brand, which beautifully leads to my next question, which is about brand governance, which working with institutions, can be tricky in higher ed. How are universities using brand kits and other guardrails to keep AI generated assets on brand and feeling, correct for their university?
So I'll get to the AI piece in a moment, but I think it's even bigger than that, in the sense that our enterprise platform really was built around this idea of like brand compliance and brand governance. And it happened pretty organically, right? So bear with me here while I kind of walk you through a little bit of a journey.
Yeah, of course.
It sounds like you've been using Canva for a while. And what we saw in our, call it first 5 to 7 years of Canva being in existence, we saw this rapid growth in the consumer space, right? Just like people loved using it. It was easy to use tool. It's like something people had been waiting for what seemed like a very, very long time. With all of this organic growth, what we saw is that organically started entering the workspace and the higher education space. The challenge that came with that was how are we going to kind of reel in the brand aspect and the brand governance here? Because you can't do it when you have a whole bunch of individual users. So the enterprise platform was organically built off of a need that our customers had, and brand governance is extremely top of mind. So that's kind of the core of what our enterprise product is built from. Specifically as it relates to AI, within our enterprise platform, administrators have the ability to choose what AI features are turned on or turned off for their team. So there is this level of like granular control, but not only within AI. When you think about the brand just as a whole, leveraging branded templates, locking down certain templates, ensuring your brand kit, which, for those that don't know, the brand kit on Canva consists of your colors, your fonts, your logos, your branded images, even leveraging AI to a certain extent, your brand voice, right? So you put all of these like brand guidelines in place. Now with the enterprise platform, you also can enforce them. So not that you want to totally control what an end user is producing. You want to give them a certain level of creative freedom, but you also want to empower them to have that creative freedom and do it in an easy way where they're not stressed about going off brand, and creative professionals aren't stressed about them going off brand, right? Back to your question of like, how are we keeping it on brand? The enterprise platform is really built with that top of mind. And the main ways that we go about doing it is through the brand kits, brand controls, permissions. I can probably talk for the rest of this podcast about the enterprise. Probably not the best place for us to be doing a full product demo, but I do invite anyone that's listening to reach out to our team, set up a demo, see the platform for yourself. It really is incredible how much of an empowering tool it can be, and how top of mind brand governance is within the tool.
Yeah, I feel like brand kits really unlocked something for us. You know, we came out with a new brand for ODU Global just a year ago. And so one of the first things on our to-do list was getting stuff built out into Canva, and then having those colors and assets that move across those different features, whether you're working in whiteboards or presentations or, you know, all the different things that you can do in Canva. Having that brand stuff still there is such a time saver, as well as, you know, obviously being critical for things like governance. So I could probably also spend the rest of the podcast talking with you about the brand. I love the brand kits.
Yeah, no, the brand kits are great. I mean, I'm curious, and I know, you know, you have questions for me, but I'm genuinely curious from the team's perspective, you know, that maybe they are not creative professionals. Are they seeing this like ability to be able to create things quicker and more efficiently and on brand? Are you hearing that from your team, or I'm genuinely curious about your take on that?
Yeah, so I think so. It's definitely become something that, like, there are certain things that my team will still use other pieces for, potentially like other software and solutions. But Canva is such a great way to make things go faster, as well as to bring people who are, you know, maybe don't have design in their title or job function, able to use templates that help them create a quick post for social that, you know, otherwise they would not, you know, have a branded asset for, or, you know, it would be something that would be too big of a time sink for us to devote all that extra time to something like that. So yeah, between the templates and the brand kits, it's been a great time saver for everybody.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yes.
It takes me back to the first question that you asked, is like the aha moment, right? Like that's what we hear, is like this ability to empower people to do things on their own is like truly what I think the aha moment is for a lot of creative professionals. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm wondering what you're hearing about how creative teams change or evolve once AI tools like what Canva has introduced start being adopted and used by the teams.
So I think the initial most common thing we hear is hesitancy around AI, right? Not sure if we want to do it, not sure how we want to implement it, if we want to implement it. There's just this like kind of natural hesitancy, which I totally get, right? I get where people are coming from with the hesitancy towards AI. What we have seen though is once teams turn on the AI functionality and sort of embrace it to a certain way, the amount that they and their teams start to leverage it just starts to ramp up very, very quickly. So again, back to like giving more time back to creatives like this, that's what we see is like there's hesitancy in the beginning. AI is turned on. It starts to get used very, very frequently. And then that leads to time back for creative teams to be able to focus on their strategic priorities rather than like these simple sort of like mundane tasks that AI assistants can handle, whether that's generating text or figuring out what image to do or putting a presentation deck together, right? The core kind of like need gets solved by AI very, very quickly. And then creative professionals have time to focus on other things. And yeah, maybe it only gets them 90% of the way there, but that's better than a creative doing 100% of the work. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so the AI functionality, once turned on and embraced, has a tendency to ramp up very quickly among teams.
Yeah, that makes sense. This question kind of dovetails a little bit with that, but maybe asking it in a little bit different way. So I know earlier this year, Canva's 2025 report on the state of marketing in AI noted that 77% of respondents say that AI boosts team creativity. And I'm wondering what specific behaviors and results do you think signal that boost for creativity has happened?
Well, we talked about like, the mundane tasks and how using
Mhm.
AI really like simplifies some of these tasks and allows, you know, people to focus on either higher impact or work that has like maybe more value, right? So it kind of starts there. But some of the results that we often see are this can lead to maybe it's improved results in campaigns. Maybe you run a social
Mm.
media campaign and now you're starting to see that you're getting more clicks, you're getting more views, you're getting more impressions, right? So a lot of times we're seeing that the results are shown directly within campaigns. Could also be just a sheer volume of ideas, right? The number of creative ideas that are coming across now, especially in early stage ideas, are just the volume is so much higher. So that's another thing that we're seeing is the volume of ideas happening at early stages is increasing. And
Mhm.
what that's leading to is a lot of times some more unconventional ideas actually coming to fruition because you have such a large sample of ideas in the beginning. You're actually pushing out some more unconventional ideas, which is, I think, welcome in the creative space, right?
Yes.
I think people want to see more of that and not just see the same thing kind of over and over again. So, with the use of Canva, with the use of AI, more people are involved in the creative process from the beginning. So, not only does that lead to more ideas and more unique ideas coming to fruition, but it also just leads to a more diverse set of ideas to work with.
Mhm.
Uh, so, I think that's the result that we see is really tied to the types of content that comes out and how unique it is and how it performs very differently when you are actually testing it in the real world.
Yeah, that deeply resonates with me. I spent untold hours in the 90s and early 2000s doing things like painstakingly manually cutting backgrounds out of photos. And the first time I saw Canva do that in a single click, Nick, it still feels like magic to me. Like it's one of those things that I love and I talk about all the time, which you just touched on, is that idea that these tools allow designers to stay at a higher level of concepting and ideation without having to drown in hours of execution on an idea that they may not even end up using, or maybe something that just isn't right for their project. But being able to not have to go into that execution and spend hours on there, and so it's been a huge time saver, just those little tiny tools like that. Which leads me to asking if you have any predictions or maybe something on your personal wish list for something like that's kind of a labor intensive creative task that you'd love to see either rapidly improved or expedited in some way by AI.
Really good question. And you mentioned background remover. When your initial question, that was the first thing that actually came to mind because I was thinking of a specific feature. It just feels like it's been around for so long and people are so accustomed to it. It's not as much of an aha moment anymore.
Right,
Uh,
right.
yeah. Uh,
A couple
Digressing.
years ago, though.
Yeah. You asked me that 3-4 years ago. That probably would have been my answer. But no, your question kind of about like labor intensive sort of tasks that we
Yeah.
that we want to see AI sort of expedite or improve it drastically in the future. Look,
Hmm.
I think one thing that, well, I guess, all right, twofold. I'm gonna answer this question. One part
Sure.
is related to something you touched on earlier about how in Canva, you have users creating things and they send an approval workflow. And maybe there's a little bit of an aspect where like you or somebody else has to jump in, do a little bit of manual work and get it to that 100% mark. I think it'd be amazing. And I think we're not that far off to a world where AI is doing that for us, right? Like
Wow.
it becomes
Yeah.
so good that an end user is just being told as they're creating, this looks off brand, double check this, or even take it a step further, makes a recommendation of like, maybe you should use this brand picture and from your brand kit. Maybe use this
Yeah.
brand image instead. Maybe use this sort of tone instead, right? So I think that to me would be amazing, where I can just jump in, put in a few words, and like an AI is actually telling me in real time how to make that improvement. So I guess that would be a sort of personal wish list, would be them becoming
Yeah.
so AI assistants becoming so effective at turning this off-brand content into content that's like ready to publish. Another way of thinking about this is back to the time saving piece where an end user you can do this to a certain extent, but I think there's ways that we're going to get a lot more efficient about doing this is taking a single creative asset and being able to just spread it across multiple formats, multiple, whether that's multiple social media channels, maybe you want to convert it into a doc and a presentation deck, but basically that the concept of taking one single asset and within a few clicks and prompts, just having it spread across a whole variety of formats, I think that would be a very cool thing, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it in the near future.
That sounds awesome. Well, in closing, kind of connected to that, if you could fast forward a few years, is there a surprising task that you think campus marketers will hand off to AI that hasn't been done yet? And conversely, do you think there's any creative work that is really going to have to stay uniquely human?
Okay, so I think the first part of the question was content, like things that campuses marketers will just hand off to AI, right?
Yeah.
I think the area where I think we're maybe a few years away from this is really around like sort of content planning and campaign planning. I think you can do it to a certain extent, but right now we think more in terms of sort of the next campaign, and that could be in terms of like days or weeks or maybe max a few months, right? I could see a world in a few years where the planning of campaigns and content calendars becomes so automated that marketers aren't even thinking about it anymore because it's getting fed in and automated so quickly that you're now planned out years in advance potentially. And not only that, but the content also dynamically adapts to real world events. So yeah, you can try to plan content 3 years in advance, but like things in the real world are going to change. So
Yeah.
I think that's the key difference in the future is where it will dynamically change based on things that are happening in the real world. And it'll get so good to the point of like, we won't even have to double check it because we'll have so much confidence in it, that we'll have confidence in it actually publishing and being accurate 2 years down the road. So that would be a pretty big wow moment. And I do think we're a few years away from that though.
That's cool.
The second part of your question though, I'm really glad you asked because this is actually really personally important to me. I think the human touch is just irreplaceable to me. I think we see it today. I'm starting to become somewhat good at when I get an email or I get a response, being able to identify if an AI wrote it or a human wrote it. I think everybody's starting to sort of train themselves on this, right? So I think that human touch component is truly irreplaceable. The specific part, I think, is how individuals uniquely tie in their personal values into a message. I don't think that that's something that an AI is ever going to really be able to solve for, because human emotional intelligence, and especially when you think of sort of intense times or critical times, there's a human component that comes out in people's messaging and people's words that I don't think an AI is ever going to be able to figure out. So I think that the human touch is irreplaceable. It will always need to be there. And in the future, we're probably going to need it more than ever because so much is going to be automated. But maybe I'm just extremely optimistic, but I do think in the future, it'll be a world where things are more efficient, but the human touch is still always going to stay super important, super top of mind.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful. And talking to you today has made me even more excited about what's in store for creatives in the future. So Nick, I really appreciate your time again today. How can people learn more about Canva and connect with you if they have additional questions?
Of course. Thanks for having me here again. The best thing to do if you're interested in learning more about Canva, specifically our campus and enterprise solutions, just search Canva for campus, click the contact button. Someone from our team will be in touch. If you'd like to get in touch with me personally, I believe my LinkedIn profile will be shared. So feel free to connect or shoot me a note on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anyone and everyone.
Awesome. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Control Plus Create. Big thanks again, Nick, for sharing an insider's look at how AI tools in Canva are driving fresh ways to co-create with AI. We'd love to hear how AI tools are transforming your team, what AI tool feels like magic to you this year, or any other big takeaways you have from this episode. I hope you'll join me on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going. I'm Dave Hunt. We'll catch you next time.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.